What is going on, everybody? This is Sergeant Sentinel with another discussion video. Now, this gaming discussion video is about one of my favorite games, Far Cry 4. And the reason why I wanted to make this video was because I feel like Far Cry 4 back in the day, and even now, still gets a bad rap, and a lot of people hate on it. They say it didn't change enough from Far Cry 3, which was tremendously successful. Everybody loves that. So I wanted to look at some of these criticisms. Now, in Far Cry 3, you're running for your life as Southern California douchebag Jason Brody. He's a rich white kid. His friends are all rich white kids. They live the good life in Southern California, and of course, whenever they vacation in the South Pacific, they end up getting taken hostage by pirates. Now, Jason Brody's the only one he escapes, but he escapes with the help of someone known as Dennis Rogers. Now, Dennis Rogers is actually connected with the Rakyat, which are kind of like a tribal group that live on Rook Island where all this is happening. And he helps you throughout the game. He basically gets you started in Far Cry 3 because, as you see, Jason Brody is completely out of his element. And so Dennis Rogers kind of explains to you, hey, the tatau is what he calls the tattoos on your left arm. He says, hey, as you progress, you'll unlock more points, and you can unlock more skills on the tatau, which make you a more capable jungle warrior. You also, throughout this time, are also able to learn to craft like bigger backpacks, better holsters, stuff that helps you out in game, and it does kind of have very mild RPG elements in that way, I guess. So, Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4 do have similarities, and I'm not going to deny that they don't. I am going to admit that they do. Like the tatau that you have in Far Cry 3, they have something similar in Far Cry 4, but you're not getting tattoos, you just unlock skills. Also, you do craft items from animals that you hunt in Far Cry 4, much like how you do in Far Cry 3, and both characters are Americans. You play as Jason Brody from Southern California in Far Cry 3. You play as Ajay Gale in Far Cry 4, although you're not from Southern California, at least not as far as I know. But the types of enemies you fight are different, and of course the locales are different. But before I jump into the differences, I'm going to highlight a couple things that are still the same in Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4. Now, in Far Cry 3, you unlock new areas of the map by taking down these radio towers, and of course by taking down these radio towers it allows you to see clearly different types of animals that you have to hunt. And in Far Cry 4 they have something similar with the bell towers, and it's the same thing, except it's not glitched out, it's fog that is lifted. But the second thing that is similar between Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4 is of course all the combat that you're getting in. Essentially you're taking strongholds, but you're also doing missions. But a big part of that is that the driving has changed. Now, in Far Cry 3, you could be chased, but outside of a few missions, you couldn't shoot while driving. And of course, if you're just in free roam and you're getting chased by bad guys, you want to be able to shoot while you're driving. But in Far Cry 3, you absolutely couldn't do that. Well, with Far Cry 4, they revamped that. So whether you're in a mission that requires shooting while you're driving, or whether you're in free roam and you're being chased by bad guys, you can shoot while driving, and it does take a little getting used to, but it was a significant upgrade, in my opinion, of the gameplay while you drive. And it's kind of surprising that a lot of people just completely neglect to mention this when they talk about things that Far Cry 4 did that Far Cry 3 didn't do. And it's unfortunate for Far Cry 4 that people neglect to mention this purposely or accidentally, because it was a great innovation. Another innovation that occurred was how you have to basically choose a side, whether you're siding with Amida or Sabal, as far as who is leading the Golden Path. In Far Cry 3, you had a choice essentially at the end, whether you wanted to save your friends or kill them and join the Rakyat. But in this game, the decision you make, obviously, is going to affect who leads the Golden Path, and it feels like it gives you a little more agency than they gave you in Far Cry 3. But again, a lot of people just don't mention this. And yes, it's obvious that they changed locales from the Southeast Pacific to essentially kind of East Asia. But I feel like it's not doing the game credit to really emphasize how different the setting was. Now, obviously, in Far Cry 3, it took you a while to unlock the wingsuit, Whereas in Far Cry 4, you unlock it fairly early on. And because of that, you can travel to a lot of different areas. You also only had access to either the wingsuit or the hang glider in Far Cry 3. In Far Cry 4, you still have those, but you also have a gyrocopter. And it allows you to travel to a lot of different areas in the game relatively quickly, and you can actually engage enemies from that helicopter. I always use the 40 millimeter grenade launcher, and it made for a very effective way to take down convoys and to take out bases as well. Last but not least, of course, is the military that you have to fight against. You're not fighting against pirates who kind of sort of know what they're doing a little bit, and then mercenaries in the latter half of the game. No, you're pretty much fighting against military soldiers the entire time. You're fighting against the corrupt dictator's military as they're fighting against the Golden Path, which have kind of taken you in. And because of that, the enemies feel like they fight smarter than they did in Far Cry 3. Again, it's an evolution of the combat that you experience in the franchise, but it feels like a lot of people have a chip on their shoulder about Far Cry, and so if they didn't completely reinvent the wheel, they were going to say, well, they didn't do anything. And that's just not the case. They did so much between Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4 to help drive the franchise forward. And I don't know, maybe some people just didn't like the setting of Nepal, but it seems like a lot of people were already predisposed to be very antagonistic towards Far Cry 4 even before it came out. The biggest departure is that there's essentially one primary villain and 3 support villains, whereas in Far Cry 3, there was, of course, Vaas, which a lot of people considered the primary antagonist because he was always antagonizing Jason Brody, and his boss, Hoyt Volker, which was a pretty crappy final boss, if you ask me. But Pagan Min was voiced by Troy Baker. Now, if you don't know who Troy Baker is, he's a very prolific voice actor. He did a phenomenal job with Pagan Min. He's been in The Last of Us, BioShock Infinite, Batman Arkham Knight. I also believe he had a role in Death Stranding. So it's not simply enough to say, oh, he was a voice actor. He was Pagan Min in this game, and he did such a phenomenal game, bringing that character to life. And this character is not a ripoff of Vaas. It doesn't try to be Vaas. Pagan Min is his own character. He's very flamboyant, and he's very calculating with the way he does stuff. So it feels like there were big shoes after Vaas to fill. And Pagan Min, in my opinion, does a pretty good job, and I think he just doesn't get the credit that he deserves as a Far Cry villain. Again, it feels like going into this after Far Cry 3, people expected it to be Far Cry 3 Part 2, and when it wasn't, a lot of people just had that chip on their shoulder, and they were upset about it. And I feel like even with all the innovations that I mentioned, with the tremendous voice acting, of course, by Troy Baker, it feels like that's why Far Cry 4 gets a bad rap. And so if you were sitting on the fence about Far Cry 4, or you played it years ago and you didn't like it, my suggestion would be to go back and give it another try, because in my opinion, it is better than Far Cry 3 in a number of ways, and it definitely deserves a second shot. What are your thoughts about Far Cry 4? Did you play it at release and absolutely love it? Or did you play an hour of it and say, hey, this just ain't for me? If you have something to say, definitely leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about it. If you did enjoy this video, definitely hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe right now. And share this video with other people who enjoy gaming-related content so they can check it out as well. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for checking it out. This is Sergeant Sentinel. Take it easy, gamers.